Hi, so we're going to talk a little bit about the pre-planning portion of an element of set design that is typically, in my opinion, forgotten about. So when we get a job, right, or an assignment to create a set design, right, we immediately think, okay, so let's start drawing, right? Let's start sketching. Let's start thinking about our ideas on how we're going to transform the director's idea into reality on the stage, right? But before we can do that, there's honestly a checklist of things that you've got to do before you ever start sketching out ideas, right? So the number one thing that we've got to think about is the space, right? So where are we doing the show? Are we doing a show in a proscenium space, right? Which is a lot like Blandford Hall or the River Park Center, right? We've got that kind of framing aspect where the audience is the fourth wall of the stage. So the audience is in front of all of the action, right? Or we can do a show in a black box setting, like an in the round stage, which is a lot like the Acorn on campus here, or like the Jody Berry Theater at River Park Center that allows for audience to be on all four sides. So think like boxing ring where there's somebody in the middle, right? Or we can do a stage that's a thrust, right? Which is the audience is going to be on three sides and you've got the back wall kind of covered for the audience or for the actors. So think like a catwalk, right? Like a model thing, right? So once we kind of figure out where we're doing our show, right? How many sides are we having the audience on? That is a big part of how we're going to design, right? Because if you have an idea of a full house situation, right? So let's say we're doing Little Women, right? So if we're deciding that we want to build the whole March house, well, that's not going to be conducive to an in the round or sometimes possibly even a thrust, right? Because then you've got audience on either all four sides or three sides. So it's going to construct that view of that audience, right? So we're going to have to adjust how we view what we're designing, right? So thinking about that space is our number one thing, okay? And then our second thing is our script, right? So if we're going to continue with the theme of Little Women, right? We can assume that the majority of the people know Little Women, right? But you may not know this adaptation, right? So the script that the director has picked may not be the same as what you know, right? I mean, you can think about all of the movie versions or the different adaptations that have been written or produced over time, right? There are different things that happen in each one, and not all of them are consistent, right? So you've got to read the script, right? Doesn't matter if you already know it. Read this script, read this version. There's a reason why the director chose this exact version to produce, right? That's going to tell you about the tone, right? The tone of the story, right? What is the center focus? What is the message that the director is wanting to tell the audience, okay? So within reading that script, you're going to make notes. And I mean like a ton of notes, okay? So maybe photocopy it or get 2 copies because you're gonna be underlining and highlighting and get all the post-it notes, because anytime there is a location change, right, document it. Anytime there is a different, I don't know, spatial need, right? So if they talk about different doorways or different windows, right? Or if they talk about there being stairs or another level, right, within the piece. Going with Little Women, right? They talk a lot about Joe's attic, right? Is that a need for the show? Are you going to need to build a balcony situation, right? That's going to work for the director's vision and for the overall theme of the show, right? So start making those notes. Is there a weather change, right? I know in Little Women, they start off at Christmas, but then Little Women spans from, what is it, like 1861 to 1876, I think is the whole time period span. right? So that's a big chunk of time that you're gonna have different seasons and different changes, right? So make those notes, okay? So when you're thinking about that script, right, you're gonna also think about the time period. I know I just said the time period, but think about that big chunk of time, right? That is a big peak in history that you have access to, right? So whether it's doing a Google search or go to the library, right? We've got a wonderful resource in the community for the public library or even on campus here, right? You've got access to learning about the Civil War, right? And that comes to looking at the architecture, right? The architecture of the Civil War changes based off of the financial situation that people are in. So when you think about the March family, they're not necessarily poor, but they're not necessarily wealthy either. They have everything that they need, but they don't have everything that they want, if that makes any sense. So thinking about kind of that in between, right, for your time period. And the next part is really a conversation. So yeah, you've done the research, right? You've taken your script and you have taken every single note possible, and you know exactly what is needed within the spatial requirements and the set requirements, and you understand, you know, the aspects of the time period, right? You feel like you've done the work. But let's say that your director doesn't want to go full on time period, right? That they want to hint at the time period instead of going full on ball gowns and the ornate wallpaper and things like that. That they just want to have small hints at it. So even if it's just some of the furniture, right? So if we think about kind of a solid oak wood table, or a cream colored fainting couch, or an accurate period piano, right? So those are things to kind of think about and have those conversations with your director, because ultimately it's not up to you, right? So you are hired or asked or commissioned, whatever situation you're in, right, to tell the story of the director, right? So you are there as a piece in the puzzle to create the full vision, right? So you may be dead set on something, but what if it doesn't work out for the way that your director is viewing it, right? So there's got to be that conversation and that compromise there, right? So, and that's where collaboration comes in. So let's say that you have this perfect vision for everything to be pastels, right? You have it dead set that you want the walls to be kind of this like baby blue aspect, and the trim is going to be this like pale purple, and you want the couch to be kind of a pink, right? Well, what if your costume designer also has the same idea? It may not collaborate well, you know what I'm saying, right? So then everybody's just gonna look like a baby shower threw up, right? So having those conversations between departments is going to help you eventually get to put pen to paper or pencil to paper, or if you're gonna do a like online CAD, right, or SketchUp, or however you want to do that box model or that design, right? It's going to help that rendering process, which is a little long, let's be real, right? Sketching things out by measurements and dimensions is not an easy feat, okay? So having these conversations early on, right, before, right, this is pre-planning, right? Before you ever decide to design something is going to help you in the long run. Same with having those conversations with your lighting designer, right? Maybe you in your head going with that pastel, right? You're really wanting everything to be kind of light and bright, and I'm envisioning like Easter eggs everywhere, right? But just kind of that bright pastel, very feminine, typically feminine kind of color palette. Well, what if your lighting designer is really vibing with the idea of things being very dark and muted? Well, we know how color reacts, right? So it's going to wash out your set or make your set look not at all as bright and pink and Eastery as you're wanting it to, right? So you have those conversations so that everybody is on the same page. So typically with your pre-planning, let's hope that your director or stage manager or whoever is doing kind of the most is going to call in a production meeting. If they don't, you ask for one, right? Go ahead and say, hey, when is our first production meeting? If they don't have one planned, you plan one, right? Say, hey, I just want all of us to be on the same page. I want all of us to have the same common goal and the common idea of the show's tone, right? Because when we think about a set, right, and all the pre-planning and the production and the post-production stuff, theater is such a visual medium, and if we don't understand why something is there, then it shouldn't be there, right? So like, I know we've been talking about Little Women, but if we have, let's say, a bookshelf on there, why? Right? Why is that bookshelf there? If there's a piano, why? It says in the script. Okay, but why that specific piano, right? Why are there 6 chairs, right? Why do we have a rug? Why do we have the set that color, right? What is that color theory aspect of it? What does that make the audience feel, right? So if we're not having those conversations on why we're doing something, then why do it at all, right? So I think the number 2 things, let's go with that, is conversation and collaboration, especially when it comes to pre-planning, right? And honestly, throughout the whole process. If we're not having those conversations, if we don't know how to speak to our creative team, then we're not gonna be in a good position once we start actually designing and building, right? Because once you get power tools out, that's a safety issue. If you don't know how to communicate what you are doing, it's not going to end up well for any party, right? Does that make sense? Because in the long run, you want your vision told, the director wants their vision told, and everyone else in the process wants the same. But if nobody's communicating, something is going to get lost. And honestly, somebody's feelings might get hurt, which I know sounds really kind of cheesy and dumb, but when you have been working on a project for 3 months and you are so set on one thing, make your opinion heard is what I'm getting at, right? So just to kind of go back over this, right? Space. Where are we performing? What does that require, right? Script. We gotta read the script multiple times. Multiple times. I'm so serious. It sounds dumb and it sounds like a waste of time. Read it once for you, right? Read it once for you with just thinking about the play in general, and then read it from a designer's point of view, right? And then read it again with that vision in your head, right? And then read it again later on with the director's vision, right? It takes 20 minutes of your time, right? This is part of the job commitment, right? This is part of the creative process. Read it, please. If there's anything I can instill in this, read the script, okay? Figuring out your time period, right? Doing the research, making those vision boards, right? Make a Pinterest, right? Make a Pinterest board or get out a collage, right? Have that physical evidence, right? That you can see of what you want your set to look like based off of the time period, right? Talk to somebody who knows more than you, right? There's always somebody who's going to know more than you. That is a resource, y'all. That's not a detriment, that's a resource. So talk to somebody who knows so much about this time period, okay? Have those conversations, right? Have those conversations. Speak with your team, speak with the actors, right? Going back, right? Always talk to somebody who knows more than you, right? Talk to those mentors, talk to, past directors on, hey, I'm really struggling with this idea. How do I make it work safely? Or how do I make it work within this time period, right? Have those conversations. And collaboration. Be open to collaborating with your lighting designer and your director and your stage manager and your actors and your community, right? Don't be afraid to collaborate, okay? I know this isn't a typical kind of step, but this is a step people forget about, You can't do a show, you can't do a design without these steps, okay? Thank you.